Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Talk Soccer to Me podcast, an American soccer podcast for the American soccer fan, hosted by yours truly, Jack Alt. Today is Friday, January 30th. This is the 10th episode of the Talk Soccer to Me podcast. Hopefully one of these days we will have some sort of intro music to roll into it, and not just me talking off the bat. And we got plenty to talk about today. We're going to go over the 18 Champions League matchups from Wednesday. They all started and finished at the same time, as well as the Europa League matches from Thursday, and then we're going to preview everything for the upcoming weekend and the Champions League and Europa League draws that are coming on Friday. Before we get into all the action, make sure to follow Talk Soccer to Me on all social medias and streaming services. It's at Talk Soccer to Me on Twitter and TikTok, and the at Talk Soccer to Me podcast on Instagram. To listen, again, Talk Soccer to Me is listed on Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube. Follows and positive ratings go a long way for the podcast. Views, content, everything, any type of interaction. So just thank you for who are all listening and who all are interacting with the podcast. But let's get into it. Let's get started. It was a very, very, very exciting Wednesday. Since it was the final round of the Champions League, the 36 teams, all matchups started at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard on Wednesday, and they were all going to finish at the same time, which made it for really exciting watching because there wasn't any, if you get a draw and I get a draw, we'll be all right. Everyone kind of had to figure it out as they went along. There was no, we know if Inter beat so-and-so, we'll be good. Like, no. Everyone had to play at the same time. You had to just win the game ahead of you. It was made for really, 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 really entertaining watching. Probably the best part of the day was the fact that the Goal Show on the CBS Sports Network, they brought in Jamie Carragher, Thierry Henry, and Micah Richards, the show that they usually don't have them on, and those three just highlighting on every goal in a similar way to like an NFL Red Zone, which is absolutely entertaining. I mean, it was incredible. They were so good. It was so funny. It definitely elevated the show, in which I was already really excited because it was going to be 18 games all at the same time. It was fantastic watching. CBS coverage of the Champions League is just the best. I remember when Fox got it and really brought it to America, and then you had Bleacher Report for a little bit. TNT had coverage, but the CBS crew, the CBS show, the Goal show, everything CBS does is, I think, really a step up and is really just made for entertaining. The Goal show was awesome. All those guys on there, Kate, Scott, they're all fantastic, and it really made for entertaining watching. And even before we get into the games, without a doubt, this league phase style of the Champions League compared to the group stages is a massive, massive, massive upgrade. I saw some dorks on social media who were like, teams can lose twice and draw 3 times and still qualify. Okay, so what? The original group stage format that they had for close to 20 years was boring. You maybe got 3 or 4 good groups, if that, and there were plenty of games that were just absolutely meaningless. Like, yes, teams like Man City and Bruges qualified with 3 losses and 2 draws. That doesn't matter. It was exciting to the end. This is made for our excitement, and it was extremely exciting. Not having repetitive games, different matchups every week. This was a massive upgrade for the Champions League, and they should have implemented the league phase 10 years ago. But that's enough talking about the general scope of the league phase, which has been phenomenal. Again, it's a massive upgrade. I know I keep harping on it. I just haven't found the Champions League this entertaining prior to knockout phases ever. This has been the best. This has been the best so far, and I'm very excited in the years going forward. But we do have to get into the games. Again, there were 18 games. They all happened at the same time. I don't really have a particular order in which I'm going to talk about the games, just kind of as they came along to me, as I was taking notes. So, we'll get into it, describe the games, see where they end up, and then after I talk about the 18 games, we're going to talk about the potential draw on Friday. I thought about, maybe pushing the podcast after Friday so then we can talk about the draw, but I think we'll focus more on that when we actually preview the games because I believe the games are going to be played in about 2 weeks. It's going to be the Tuesday and Wednesday of February 11th and 12th, and then the following weekend on the 18th and 19th. So I'll probably highlight the drawn matchups closer to those games instead of right now. Let's just dive into the first game of the Champions League. Inter Milan hosted Monaco. Inter Milan was coming into the game knowing that if they won, they would qualify to the top 8, which was huge for seeding purposes. And let me get this out of the way. The objective of teams was to finish in the top 24, which qualifies you for the knockout playoffs. And then if you finish in the top 6, if you finish 17th to 24, you're going to be unseeded in the knockout playoffs, and you're going to host the first game of the tie. The teams that finished 9th to 16th, they hosted the knockout playoffs, second tie. They were seeded. They're considered seeded. But the big one was to finish first to 8th. Finish in the top 8. Because if you finish in the top 8, that meant you had to play 2 less games and you were automatically qualified for the round of 16. So Inter Milan came into the game knowing if they win, they're guaranteed in the top 8. Monaco, if they win, they might need some help, but they could finish in the top 8. And there was only really one team in this game that deserved it. Inter Milan came out early, got a penalty about 4 or 5 minutes into the game. Lisandro Martinez hit an absolute missile right down the middle. Didn't even matter. Scored. And then there was an early red card, Christian Mawissa, about 12 minutes in. And then that was the point where you really realized that this was Inter Milan's game to win. There was poor goalkeeping, honestly, multiple times throughout the game by Radoslaw Majecki for Monaco, the goalkeeper there. And Martinez capitalized with one of his mistakes off a nice strike. And then from that point on, the game was particularly over. Martinez did add a third in the 67th minute, and the game finished 3-0 to Inter Milan over Monaco. With that, Inter Milan finishes 4th, so they're going to be advanced to the round of 16. They're in a pod with the third seeded team, and Monaco finished 17th. So they are going to be unseeded going into the knockout phase playoffs. And I think the biggest thing to take away from this game is just how good and consistent Lautaro Martinez has been this year. Obviously, he's massively successful. He's got a World Cup win. He's got multiple Copa America wins. He's won the league with Inter. He's won the Cup with Inter. He's a Champions League runner-up with Inter Milan. But I just feel like every week when I talk about Serie A, I'm constantly going on about Lautaro Martinez scoring, Lautaro Martinez assisting, how successful and great he is to constantly watch this season and in the seasons prior. His stats speak for themselves. He's got 15 goals in 30 games. 9 in the league, 5 in Europe. He got 22 in 47 games last year, 28 and 57 the year before that, 25 and 49 the year before that. He's consistently been good. I know he gets the respect he deserves sometimes. Like, he was pretty high up in Ballon d'Or voting, but I think when you talk about players who are some of the best in the world, Lautaro Martinez doesn't get brought up enough. He is incredible, without a doubt. I think Inter Milan is definitely one of the teams to watch out for. Obviously, they're about 2 years, maybe 3 years removed from a Champions League run. I think actually it was the 2023 Champions League final where they lost to Manchester City, and they played better in that game. I remember watching that game. Inter Milan was the better team. I think Lukaku had a chance or two to tie it up towards the end of the game. But I think they're going to be a lot of people's dark horse, so to speak. A team that, obviously, while respected, is also kind of not respected, coming from the Italian league. And, since Juventus' kind of downward turn, there really hasn't been the respect for a top team in the Serie A. Yeah, without a doubt, I think Inter Milan's going to be a team to look out for. They're going to fight. They're going to be up there. I wouldn't be surprised if they, quarterfinal, semifinal, potentially final run for them in the Champions League this year. The second game in the Champions League we're going to head to was an all-British affair. Aston Villa from England hosted Celtic from Scotland. Aston Villa came into this game knowing that if they finished in the top 8, if they won, they would finish in the top 8. Celtic were also already qualified for the top 24, but as you imagine, they're going to fight and try to get into a better position. And this game saw both teams fight at times. I mean, this is a really, really interesting one. Right away, Village just got all the momentum at home. Morgan Rogers scores 3 minutes in. Then 2 minutes later, Morgan Rogers scores again. It looked like Villa was going to run away with the game. And then in the 36th minute, Adam Ida manages to get a deflection, score. 2 minutes later, Celtic keeps pushing with possession. Ida scores again in the 38th minute. It was in halftime, and it was like, all right, 2-2. Villa was kind of a talking point during the halftime show of, oh no, like they're blowing their chance of finishing the top 8. They're finished, they're not going to finish in the top 8. Well, Ollie Watkins comes out in the 60th minute. He'd been, rumored to leave earlier in the day, and Alfred came in from Arsenal. He scores in the 60th minute. Gets a penalty opportunity, actually, a couple minutes later in the 67th minute, and hits one of the worst penalty kicks I've ever seen in my entire life. It's like the John Terry miss in Moscow in the 2008 Champions League final, but worse. But it didn't really matter. Morgan Rogers put the game away for Aston Villa to go up 4-2 in the 91st minute. First European hat trick for a young Morgan Rogers. He is a fantastic player who's been up and coming. Aston Villa lost John Duran to Saudi Arabia. And then Ollie Watkins gets rumored to leave with Arsenal. And I can't imagine why Villa would be willing to let their better attacking players go. They qualified for the top 8. They have every opportunity to make a Champions League run, a good Champions League run. Yeah, they can walk away knowing, okay, we beat Celtic, we played well, we scored a bunch of goals, we're doing good. But Watkins is a good striker. John Duran is a good striker. And the possibility that they could let both them go in this winter transfer window is absolutely insane. I don't know Aston Villa if they're suffering from the English PSR kind of financial tracking to make sure no one's overspending and everyone's, spending according to their revenue. I just can't wrap my head around Villa doing so well in the Champions League this year, finishing above teams like Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, and then letting their two best strikers go. That's all I could really think about while watching this game and watching Ollie Watkins play well. I mean, yeah, you got Morgan Rogers to remind you that, okay, it's not all bad. And he's good. Morgan Rogers is a great, great player. I mean, Jacob Ramsey's good up front. You got Leon Bailly on the wing. Plenty of options to come in off the bench. I really hope for Villa's sake that, because I do believe they've already lost John Duran, that they don't lose Ollie Watkins too. I don't actually 100% know if John Duran's left. I think that one's going to be due to a medical and by the end. And I did read an article from The Athletic that it would help Aston Villa's books tremendously if they let John Duran go for, I think, roughly about 80 million United States dollars. So that's a hefty price for a young 21-year-old who doesn't start too much. But that's enough about Aston Villa's transfer speculation. Decent result for Celtic. They were already qualified. They showed heart. They're gonna have a tough go at it in the draw on Friday, but we'll get more into that later. Next game of the day was Bayern Munich hosting Slovan Bratislava. Bayern Munich coming out in these creamish jerseys. They were actually pretty nice. It was a decent Bayern Munich jersey. Slovan Bratislava has 0 wins, 0 draws, and 7 losses going into the game. So they knew they were out, and Bayern Munich was kind of stuck in limbo, knowing that top 8 really wasn't a possibility. So this game really didn't have too much energy, didn't really feature too much on the Golazo show. Highlights really weren't that exciting. Thomas Muller opened up the scoring. In the 8th minute, Harry Kane, good to see him back from injury, scored in the 63rd minute, and then the multi-time league champion Kingsley Coman made it 3-0 in the 84th minute. Marko Tolic did get one back for Bratislava in the 90th minute, only the 7th goal they've scored in the Champions League this season. It really wasn't too much to report back to in this game. I think Bayern Munich was minus 20,000 odds to win. There really wasn't a world where they didn't win. Bayern Munich's definitely going to be disappointed with this Champions League run. And I think with the struggles of teams like Real Madrid, PSG, Juventus, and Manchester City, Bayern Munich's sort of struggles have been kind of brushed aside, not really mentioned. But 12th is not good enough for a team like Bayern Munich. They definitely would have had expectations going into the season of finishing in the top 8, and those losses, at Aston Villa, at Barcelona, and the 3-0 shocking defeat that they suffered at Feyenoord have really come back to bite them. They have the potential for a tough draw on Friday. I was expecting them, to do better. And yeah, I think other teams' struggles were highlighted more, but this has definitely been a Champions League phase to forget for Bayern Munich. I think going forward, they're going to be expecting to finish in the top 8, and now they've just thrown 2 more games on top of their schedule. They do have a little bit of a benefit being a German team, less games to play overall compared to an Italian, Spanish, or English side, but I think everyone at Bayern Munich would have expected them to finish in the top 8. Next game up took us to France as the French team Lille hosted Dutch Feyenoord. Feyenoord coming off that big win in Bayern Munich. It was a game with a lot of anticipation. Both teams were sitting at 13 points, knowing if one of them won, there was a decent chance they could finish in the top 8. And the game started good. It was an early goal for Sahraoui by Lille. Feyenoord gets a corner 10 minutes later. The Mexican international player Santiago Jimenez ties it up. And then a couple minutes later, in the 38th minute, they get a own goal. Trauner. We're going to be mentioning him later. Then they score off a corner in the 57th minute. It's 4-1. I mean, they really pulled away early. 3-1 at halftime. And then the Canadian international, so North Americans representing in this game, Jonathan David, scored in the 74th minute with a nice finish to make it 4-1. And at that point, the butt whooping just kept piling on. Another Trauner own goal in the 76th minute made it 5-1. And then Remy Kabaya put the game away in the 80th minute. Final score: Lille 6, Feyenoord 1. This was rough. This was a butt whooping. Lille looked great at home. They didn't have an insane amount of opportunities, but the ones they did, they capitalized. And Feyenoord could not. Feyenoord couldn't really bounce back from that fantastic result against Bayern Munich. So yeah, I mean, all the respect in the world to Lille. They're sitting 7th. They're going to get a bye. They're the only French team to finish in the top 8. They're a good squad. I mean, they came off of a league win a couple years ago, but I think every other team in the top 8, like, it makes sense. Your Liverpool's, your Barcelona's, your Arsenal's, Atletico, Bayern. Lille was kind of the surprise team in the top 8, and I think you could make the argument they've had the best league phase out of anyone so far. So, props to Lille. Good for them. And then with the next matchup, we're going to keep the French theme going. PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, traveled to Stuttgart. And this was a big game for both teams. They were both sitting on 10 points. I believe they were both sitting outside of the top 24. So a draw really wouldn't have been good enough for either team. And whoever could pull out a victory would most likely qualify. And PSG came out of the gates swinging. Bradley Barcola scores 6 minutes in. And then Ousmane Dembele gets a European hat trick. I believe his first European hat trick. Nice run from Barcola in the 17th minute. Dembele puts it away. Solid finish in the 35th minute. Dembele puts it away. And then an absolutely beautiful goal in the 54th minute. Dembele makes it 4-0. Stuttgart did get one back in the 77th minute, but it was all for naught as Stuttgart was eliminated. 26th place. PSG with the victory finishes 15th place, so they will be seeded in the first round, the playoff round of the knockout phase. So I know the season in the Champions League didn't start perfectly for PSG. They dropped points against Arsenal, PSV Eindhoven, Bayern Munich, Atletico Madrid. In their last 2 games, they've looked phenomenal. Great runs out of the midfield from the likes of Vitinha or João Neves, Barcola, Dembele have looked absolutely great up front. They've got Kvicha Kvaratskhelia coming in. It was a fantastic signing. He's an incredible winger. They're going to have plenty of winger talent. I mean, they had Giancarlo Ramos coming in off the bench. They've got Lee Kang-in, who came off the bench. If PSG can put the French league away, and I believe they will, this is another team that could be destined for a really, really good Champions League run. I know with them finishing 15th, that does mean that they're going to be up against a really good team. If they were to make it past the playoff phase, probably play a Liverpool or a Barcelona. But I think PSG could be one of those, I don't want to call them a dark horse because it is PSG. You know, they are a financial juggernaut. They could be a dark horse. Screw it. I'm going to call it a dark horse. This is a team that has the potential to win the Champions League this year. I don't think they're going to be necessarily favored at the same levels of like a Liverpool or Real Madrid. This is a team to watch out for. This is a team that could surprise a lot of people. They've got good defenders, good goalkeepers. They're good all around. There's a good team. Next, we're going to head to Austria as RB Red Bull Salzburg hosted Atletico Madrid. Atletico coming in this game knowing that they were going to need a win to finish in the top 8. Salzburg was sitting towards the bottom, so they knew they were out. They really had nothing to play for. And Atletico Madrid showed how much of a better team they really are. The son of the coach, Giuliano Simeone, came out in the 5th minute, scored. The never-aging Antoine Griezmann scored in the 13th minute and then the 45th minute. Probably should have been a save by the goalkeeper in, honestly, both of them. Marcus Llorente makes it 4-0 in the 63rd minute. And then Adam Dagum scored in the 91st minute for Salzburg to make it 4-1. It was a great goal. I mean, it was pointless. It was the end of the game, but it was a great goal nonetheless. Atletico Madrid's good. I don't know what else to say. They've been playing good all season. They had a 10-plus winning streak earlier. They're top 3 in the Spanish league right now. They're top 5 in the Champions League phase. They're definitely going to be a team that's favored to make it into a deep run. Everyone's playing well. Their attack looks great. Antoine Griezmann looks 23, 24. You wouldn't even be able to tell that he's been around forever. Been playing at an elite level for over 10 years. You could say the same for Jan Oblak. He's been playing at a great level. They've got the ever-reliant Cesar Azpilicueta back there. Conor Gallagher coming off the bench. Rodrigo de Paul's a World Cup winning midfielder. Giuliano Simeone is not a Nepo baby because he's a fantastic player regardless of who his dad is. Atletico's good. I've said it multiple times in this show. They're a good team. They're going to be in the fight for the Spanish League. They're going to be in the fight for the Champions League. And this Salzburg was just another opponent they simply brushed away. And now we're going to go to the match that I think everyone across Europe, or frankly the world, was really tuned into. Manchester City hosting Club Brugge. Manchester City's been having an atrocious Champions League season so far. Both teams knowing they needed some sort of points to get in. Brugge was sitting a little bit ahead of Manchester City in the table. And it was one of those games where it's like, okay, is Man City going to score? And then Man City going to score? They've had chances. Are they going to score? And then Rafael Onyedika in the 45th minute scores right before halftime. And the Etihad going into halftime just felt silent. You were watching it. There was no energy. Nothing. They looked completely shell-shocked. The whole crowd, everyone. It was a good counter. They did have a goal called back because of offsides. An early Gundogan goal, I think a pass from Kevin De Bruyne. And then they come out of the second half. John Stones nearly scores. But it was one of those ones where he should have scored. So that just fed into the narrative of, oh my gosh, this is a game they're not going to win. They have no shot. And then Mateo Kovacic, he took it upon himself. A great run in the 53rd minute. Then the attack, just kind of piled on. There was an own goal. Really shouldn't have been. Should have been cleared and dealt with. Joel Ordonez for Bruges puts it in the back of his own net. Man City's up 2-1. And then Savinho kind of put the game away in the 77th minute. However, there was a period of time from right as Bruges scored in the 45th minute, and then after John Stones missed, before Kovacic's goal, where the thought did have to cross your mind, is Manchester City not going to qualify for the Champions League? That would have been insane. Guardiola looked awful on the sidelines. He looked distraught, confused. Man City they were playing well in theory, but it just didn't feel like they were going to get a result. Haaland had an opportunity to get the ball to De Bruyne, and he just didn't. Took the selfish striker out. They weren't really beating anyone one-on-one. They were just kind of passing the ball around. And thank God Kovacic, thank God for Manchester City and Pep Guardiola's sake, Kovacic just took it upon himself, went on a darting run from the defense, and put the ball in the back of the net. Maybe there really wasn't a chance that Manchester City wasn't going to qualify for the knockout phase, but it really felt like for a couple minutes there, oh my gosh, Bruges is going to come in here and get points, and they're not going to do it because a draw wouldn't have been enough. That goal, great goal by Kovacic, actually still wouldn't have advanced them, but they did get it done. So good for them, I guess. Bruges fought hard, played well, and actually they still qualified. They're the last team to get in. They finished ahead of Dinamo Zagreb on goal differential, and they finished 24th place. Manchester City finished 22nd overall. We'll get more into their draw later, and yeah, that's all you got, Man City. They show signs of maybe they're coming back. Good result against Chelsea, but this wasn't a comfortable 3-1 win. This wasn't a great 3-1 win. Bruges had nearly just as many shots on target as Manchester City did. And what was almost shocking was the fact that they didn't really substitute anyone. Only 2 substitutions in an already busy schedule. It's kind of a crazy move by Guardiola. But hey, that part of the season's over. Now they just have the knockout phase to worry about. Then we head to Germany as former champions of the competition. I believe the 1997 champions. Borussia Dortmund took on Shakhtar Donetsk. Dortmund was currently sitting at about 12 points. In the table, Donetsk was sitting at 7 and needed a miracle upon miracles of a win and help from other teams as well to qualify for the knockout phase. Dortmund obviously hoping that a couple teams lose and they can make a push for the top 8. Adeyemi for Dortmund takes a shot around 17 minutes in, and Guirassy scores 17th minute. Gets the second goal on a long ball 44 minutes in, makes it 2-1 going into halftime. Marlon Gomez scored for Shakhtar in the 50th minute. Frankly, it was more poor goalkeeping by the Dortmund goalkeeper Gregor Kobel, and gets through in the 50th minute. And then the 79th minute, Rami Benzabaini puts it away. The 79th minute, Dortmund wins. Dortmund finishes 10th in the table. Shakhtar Donetsk finishes 27th, and the Ukrainian club is not able to advance to the knockout phases. Borussia Dortmund desperately needed this win. Coming into the game, they only had 1 win in their last 10 matches. Yes, qualification was assured, and they had the potential of top 8. But for a team that's been struggling in Germany, and they got rid of their manager, Sahin, they desperately needed that. Seriously. If they hadn't gotten this result, they would have finished unseeded. And for a team that needs all the breaks they can get going into the rest of the season, this one was huge. I think they'll have a favorable draw come Friday when the teams get announced. I believe they're bringing in a new manager soon. So this is a good result for Dortmund. Also good to see the American Giovanni Reina come off the bench and get an assist on, I believe it was the last goal. Yes, to make it 3-1. Yeah, Dortmund needed this. It wasn't a make or break game. It wasn't a season's over game, but they needed a win, and they got it. Next up in our Champions League rotation, we're going to head to northern Italy as Juventus hosted Benfica. Benfica was sitting at 10 points, knowing they desperately needed to win. Juventus was at 12 points, hoping to win to get a better spot. I believe Juventus was already qualified and Benfica wasn't. Juventus gets a counter about 16 minutes in, and then out of nowhere, Vangelis Pavlidis counters Juventus's counter. Benfica stops it. They go up 1-0 in the 16th minute, and then in the 80th minute, Orkan Koçu wins the game for Benfica. Benfica go into Juventus and pick up a 2-0 victory. This is just another game in a long line of disappointing results for Juventus. Yes, the 20th place finish in the Champions League this season isn't the worst result in the world, but this is a team that's slowly slipping away in the Italian table. They've got more draws than they can count. Thiago Motta has a team that seems organized and it seems like they have a plan, but they're missing this cutting edge. And throughout the season, it's just been disappointing results for Juventus. I think the fact that they only got 9 goals in their 8 Champions League games is alarming. Like, yeah, it's great to only concede 7, but you're not scoring yourself. And that's a problem. And it's going to be a problem come the knockout phases where you're an unseeded team. You're going to have to go somewhere in the second leg. And if you need a goal, Juventus doesn't strike me as a team that's going to get that last-minute goal or the goals necessary to win a Champions League tie. It's been a season to forget for Juventus. Benfica is, I definitely think they're going to be very happy. They're one of the 2 teams outside of the top 5 leagues to be in the top 16. I think one of the only 6 teams outside the top 5 leagues to qualify for the knockout phases themselves. They finished ahead of the other Portuguese team, Sporting Lisbon, so that'll always be a sense of pride. They're going to play one of Monaco or Brest, which I said I would talk about the draw later, but here we are. And yeah, I mean, it was a great result. They commanded the field. They let Juventus have possession, but they soaked it in. Never really felt threatened at any point. So great result for Benfica. These Portuguese teams are always a little frisky. You know, you can't go into a matchup with a Portuguese team and think you're just going to walk away fine. No, not happening. Next, AC Milan with a jersey that was actually kind of shockingly similar to Bayern Munich's. Had to go to Dinamo Zagreb in Croatia. Hopefully get a result so they could finish in the top 8. Dinamo Zagreb was hoping that if they were able to get a win, they could finish in the top 24. They obviously would need help from someone else. Milan didn't need help. They just needed to win. Well, it was a good day and it was a bad day to be an American. Poor giveaway pretty early on. I believe it was the defender Matteo Gabbia slips. Dinamo Zagreb, Martin Baturina is able to put it away in the 19th minute. They go up 1-0. And 39th minute, American Yunus Musa gets a second yellow card. He's off in the 39th minute. Christian Pulisic, the other American, got kind of an ugly goal in the 53rd minute. Gave Milan some hope. A draw, actually, for Milan may have been enough. At the time, it looked like it would have been enough, but it wouldn't have been enough at the end. And then Marco Pajaka puts it away. Zagreb scores again. Milan got a penalty right after that, so I was like, okay, they're fighting back. But there was a foul. I believe Leao fouled someone in the build-up, and it got pulled back. Dinamo Zagreb walked away from this game with a 2-1 victory. Definitely a great result for the Croatian squad, and unfortunately, the 2-1 victory wasn't enough as the goal differential, their -7 goal differential, kept them out. They finished 25th in the Champions League phase this year. Milan, disappointingly, finished 13th, so they're going to have to play extra games. When, schedules across Europe just keep continuing to get busier and busier, Milan's definitely going to regret that. And, you want to see the Americans, it's a good day and a bad day to be an American, Musa could have done better. Pulisic, glad to see him healthy, playing well. We're gonna keep it going with the Italian teams, as Bologna, another Italian team, traveled to Sporting Lisbon. Bologna kind of really had nothing to play for. They knew they were already eliminated going into the game. Sporting Lisbon was sitting teetering on the edge at about 10 points, knowing they absolutely needed a result. Bologna scored early to Massa Pobega in the 21st minute, gets a goal off a corner, and Sporting Lisbon actually spent most of the time after that outside of the Champions League spots. And then in the 77th minute, Conrad Harder got a good strike, tied the game up 1-1. That draw moved Sporting Lisbon into 23rd place. They benefited from their decent +1 goal differential, and they qualified for the Champions League phase. The Champions League knockout phase. Bologna, disappointingly, finishes 28th. Bologna was able to get that extra spot out of Italy last year. They finished 5th. Definitely a disappointing result. They had the second lowest goal scoring total, only got 4 goals. I mean, defensively, they were stout. Only gave up 9, but Was it enough? Disappointing result for the Italian team. Yeah, Lisbon, they did all right. They had their moments. I think they were projected to win this game, and it didn't come up. Nothing came up of it. But good result nonetheless. Now they can move on, focus. I do think they're going to have an interesting draw that we'll talk about in a couple minutes in the podcast. We're going to keep rolling on some of these games. Liverpool, the current leaders of the Premier League, headed to the Netherlands to play PSV Eindhoven. And Liverpool kind of started a B squad. Guys like Jarell Quansah, Kostas Tsimikas, Connor Bradley, Wataru Endo, James McConnell, Federico Chiesa. Well, Chiesa's not a B player, but with his injuries, they had guys on the bench I'd frankly never heard of, unless you're really closely paying attention to Liverpool. PSV were, sitting at 11 points. They knew they needed a result. A loss probably would have been enough, but this was something they didn't want to leave it to chance, and they didn't. It didn't start out great. There was a penalty on Federico Chiesa. Cody Gakpo puts it away in the 28th minute, and then just an amazing goal 7 minutes later for PSV. Johan Bakayoko was assisted by the American Ricardo Pepi. Fantastic. I mean, definitely look it up. And then 5 minutes after that, Harvey Elliott is just in the right place at the right time in the Liverpool attacking box. Makes it 2-1. But the Eindhoven press right before halftime made it 2-2. And it was really exciting. And then Eindhoven kept fighting. And then they score 5 minutes into the first half extra time. The American Ricardo Pepi makes it 3-2 going into halftime. There weren't any other goals in the second half. Unfortunately, there was a red card for the teenager Amaro Nalo making his debut for Liverpool. You hate to see it. I mean, the kid made a mistake. He lunged at a guy on a run. It probably was a red, but it was just harsh. It was harsh considering at this point in the game it really didn't mean anything, and you worry about the young man's confidence. So hopefully he can bounce back. Liverpool finish top of the Champions League phase. They're going to get more money from this league phase than anyone else. 7 wins, 0 draws, 1 loss. 17 goals for, 5 against. PSV Eindhoven with the win finished 14th. They're going to be seeded in the knockout phase playoffs. Overall, good for them. They were the top seeded team outside of the big 5 leagues. And really only one French team finished better than them in Lille. So great job for PSV. There is some bad news out of the game, though. The American Ricardo Pepi did suffer a knee injury. He's going to be out for a considerable amount of time. Hopefully he gets better going into the 2026 World Cup cycle. I don't know if it's going to be out for a year type situation, but I definitely think he's going to be on the bench for a couple months, which is unfortunate. We're going to head over to Spain as another English team kind of played a B side. Girona, who were virtually eliminated, they only had 1 win through the first 7 games, was hosting an Arsenal side that basically didn't, as long as they didn't lose by like 10, they would have qualified for the top 8. And it got a little scary there for Arsenal for a minute. A really good pass, through ball, gets behind Thomas Partey. Girona's Arnat Danjuma makes it 1-0 in 28th minute. You do wonder if the goalkeeper Neto could have done a little bit better. Came out really quickly on the breakaway, and he was able to put it away. Jorginho gets a penalty in the 38th minute. He's an incredible penalty kick taker, so that had no doubts there. And then Ethan Nwaneri, nasty goal. Curls in, puts on his left foot. Glad to see him back and healthy for the Arsenal. It looked like later in the game, Girona was going to tie it up, but they were very marginally offsides in the play. So game stayed 2-1, and then Arsenal got a penalty again, and the game stayed 2-1 again. Raheem Sterling, who's kind of been struggling with his form and confidence, had a chance for an easy goal, but it was a decent save by the Girona goalkeeper, Paul Lopez. But yeah, it really wasn't enough for the Catalonian side. I mean, they had a really good run in the Spanish league last year, and they just weren't able to capitalize it into the Champions League. They finished 33rd, only 1 win out of 7 games. They only scored 5 goals. Arsenal, on the other hand, are sitting pretty great. They finished 3rd, right behind Barcelona by 2 points in the goal differential. They're going to have the bye to the round of 16, and they're more than likely going to have a pretty favorable knockout phase matchup. This is an Arsenal team they're kind of in this weird limbo where they're second in the Premier League, and they're not really desperately behind Liverpool. They're 3rd in the Champions League, but they're just not clicking. They're leaving a lot to be desired, and I think you hope for Arsenal's sake and for Arsenal fans' sake that they managed to turn it up. They managed to get into that second gear because even though they've been kind of treading water, they've put themselves in a good position to where if they do want to start kicking ass and taking names, they're in a good spot in the Champions League and they're a good spot in the Premier League. So it'll be really interesting over the next couple weeks to see if Arsenal can do anything with the good spot they've put themselves in, especially as Bukayo Saka hopefully comes back from injury pretty soon. And now we're just rolling along with these games. We headed to a game that frankly didn't matter whatsoever. We went to Austria as Sturm Graz hosted RB Leipzig. This game finished 1-0 to Sturm Graz. They sent in a corner, and the right back, Arjan Malic, found himself wide open. Sturm Graz picked up their second win of the Champions League season after they defeated Girona earlier at the end of last year, well, last calendar year, still within this season. Leipzig disappointing. The German team, which made a semi-final appearance 5 years ago, finished 32nd. So Sturm Graz finished 30th. Leipzig finished 32nd. Really not much to talk about this game. It was a lame duck game. Neither team really had anything to play for besides pride and the $700,000 a team gets when you win in a Champions League phase. And I guess the more money you receive for where you finish in the table. But yeah, it really wasn't much to report back regarding this game. I think if Leipzig were to finish in the top 4 or 5 in Germany this year, they are going to hope for a better result. And it was nice to see Sturm Graz. They broke up the absolute dominance that Salzburg's had in the Austrian league in the last couple of years. So hopefully we see them, back in the Champions League phase. We then see last year's German champion and Europa League runner-up Bayer Leverkusen host Sparta Prague out of the Czech Republic. Prague knew they were eliminated going into the game. Bayer Leverkusen was going to be pushing for a top 8 spot. So you kind of had one team that was massively motivated and one team that was not. And this was a completely one-sided game. Jeremy Frimpong sets up for a nice run. Florian Wirtz was there on the cutback to make it 1-0 in the 32nd minute. And then Nathan Tella scored off a free kick in the 64th minute to basically just end this game. Leverkusen finished 6th in the table. Sparta Prague finished 31st. Leverkusen setting themselves up for a good spot. 2 games off, especially as they look to push Bayern Munich in the German league. They're kind of really right now set up for the only team. I believe they're 4 points behind them with plenty of time to go. And it's just another good result for Bayer Leverkusen. I hope Xabi Alonso never leaves. I know he's constantly been linked with that Real Madrid job. But his Leverkusen team's fun. They attack well. They've got great players. They're definitely favorites. Probably one of the top 10 teams most likely to win the Champions League. And 2 less games is really going to go a long way for them. Good on you. Bayer Leverkusen. We then head to France. Don't worry, we only have about 3 more games to go over. We head to France as Stade Brest hosts Real Madrid. Real Madrid was sitting better than they had been in previous weeks, but they desperately needed a win to get into the knockout phase, and then there was a long shot they could finish in the top 8. Brest had already qualified, but they were also hoping to be seeded in the knockout phase, and this was pretty much a one-sided game. Rodrigo scored again, great shot. Rodrigo's fantastic. Brest then got one back, but it was eventually ruled offsides, and then some great team link-up play. Bellingham gets a goal in the 56th minute. Rodrigo puts it away in the 78th minute. I mean, this game was incredibly one-sided. Real Madrid knew what they needed to do. Brest, I mean, they shot the ball a lot, but it never really felt like they were threatening or they were going to, make a dent into this game. I mean, listen, it's been a great Champions League phase for Brest. They're 18th. They're alive. Yeah, they're probably a little upset to be unseeded going into the knockout phase playoffs, but hey, they're there. First Champions League run, doing great. Real Madrid finished 11th. Similar to Bayern Munich, I think a team like Real Madrid expects to be top 8. They're not, going to want to add 2 games on top of their season, considering, they've tacked so much on. And yeah, I mean, good on Real Madrid, getting it together later into the season. They dropped some points early. The loss at Lille, at-home loss against Milan, and then going to Liverpool, they had 3 losses within their first 5 matches. But they won their last 3, turned it around. They're definitely going to be a threat going into the later stages of the Champions League knockout phase. Maybe outside of the Manchester City game, but I think the most anticipated game this week was Barcelona versus Atalanta. Both teams were currently sitting in the top 8 as the match day started. Barcelona already solidified, Atalanta needing a draw or better. If Atalanta were to get a draw, they would need help from other people. Yamal scored early in the second half, 47th minute, on a pretty good counter, right place, right time. Atalanta fired back a nasty rocket by Ederson. Then 5 minutes later, Araujo for Barcelona makes it 2-1. And Pasalic tied the game up for Atalanta in the 79th minute. Game finished 2-2. I'd say without a doubt, I mean, I would be very entertained if Barcelona versus Atalanta was a tie in the knockout phase later in the Champions League. These are two teams that can score at an incredible rate. They're very entertaining to watch. Barcelona's going to be very happy finishing second in the Champions League phase. Atalanta is going to be disappointed not to finish in the top 8, but 9th place is still incredibly respectable. Barcelona's attack has just been phenomenal during this Champions League phase. I mean, averaging 3.5 goals a game is incredibly solid. And yeah, both teams, they weren't really fighting for a lot, but they pushed on and they did well. And I think this could make for a very, very, very entertaining matchup in the future. One I'm definitely hoping to see. I don't know how it could work out with the seeding, but Barcelona versus Atalanta could be incredible in a knockout tie. The final game of the Champions League Wednesday saw Red Star Belgrade head to Young Boys in Switzerland. This was kind of another one of those lame duck doesn't matter matches. Both teams were confirmed to be eliminated going into it. Belgrade got a goal in the 69th minute from Gaylor Kanga, and that finished it off. Yeah, Red Star Belgrade finished 29th. Young Boys finished 36th. That was all 18 matches in the Champions League phase table. I think it took us a good while. So we're going to get into the potential knockout playoff matchups. So the way it works is the Champions League, you get a seed, kind of similar to like an NFL playoff or an NBA playoff. But it kind of matters more. There's still some randomness to it. So think of it as like, there's really no difference between finishing first and second. You're almost like the first pot. And then so on and so forth. So there's a certain amount of combinations of matchups that could happen. The first is the 17-18, 15-16. So the teams to finish 15th and 16th, PSG and Benfica, could play Monaco or Brest. So we're getting an all-French matchup regardless. It could be PSG Monaco, PSG Brest, or Benfica Monaco, Benfica Brest. I think a PSG Monaco tie would be incredibly entertaining, and then a Benfica Brest. And the winners of those matchups would either play Liverpool or Barcelona. So there's 8 different routes here, and we're going to go over all of them real quick. Or there's 4 routes. It's a lot, I know. The next one is the 9th seed, the 10th seed, playing the 23rd and 24th. That's going to be Atalanta and Borussia Dortmund playing one of Sporting Lisbon or Club Brugge. I think Atalanta and Dortmund are going to be the favorites, no matter what the the draw ends up being. But Sporting Lisbon is a frisky team, and I think both teams are going to be rooting to play Bruges. And then the winners of those matchups will play Lille or Aston Villa. So a quarterfinal, 2 of these 6 teams out of Atalanta, Dortmund, Lille, Aston Villa, Bruges, and Sporting are going to make the quarterfinals, which I definitely think is going to make for an interesting time. The next one, Feyenoord or Juventus, is going to play one of Milan or Eindhoven. So we have an instance where it could be Dutch on Italian and Dutch on Italian. So Juventus playing Eindhoven or Feyenoord playing Milan, or all Italian matchups and all Dutch matchups. Feyenoord playing Eindhoven, Juventus versus Milan. I think the all-country matchups would be more interesting. Definitely more passion, more rivalry, more fuel. And then the winners of those would play Arsenal or Inter Milan. So pretty strong pathway. And then the most, anticipated one, I think most interesting, Celtic or Manchester City, who finished 21st and 22nd, are going to have to play Real Madrid or Bayern Munich, which means Man City is going to play one of Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. And then the winner of that matchup is going to play one of either Atletico Madrid or Bayer Leverkusen. So going into only 2 of Man City, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Atletico Madrid, and Bayer Leverkusen are going to make the quarterfinals, which is crazy because all 5 of them easily could be quarterfinalists in any European competition. I know I'm not giving a lot of respect to Celtic, but let's be realistic here. I'd love a Celtic upset or surprise as much as the next guy, but it's not really going to happen. We're going to run through the Europa League real quick. I know most of this episode is going to be dominated by the Champions League, so we're really just going to run through everything quick, kind of keep under an hour. With the Europa League wrapping up, some of the top teams definitely finished as they expected up. Lazio first, Athletic Bilbao second, Manchester United third, Tottenham fourth, Eintracht Frankfurt fifth, Lyon sixth. You got a team like Ajax in 12th, Real Sociedad 13th, Galatasaray 14th, Roma 15th. Definitely one or two surprises from teams that didn't qualify. Nice out of France finished all the way down in 35th. Besiktas from Turkey finished 28th. And Hoffenheim, who have been struggling in the German league, finished 27th. So potentials for some good matchups. Manchester United and Tottenham both get buys as the two English representatives in this. We got potential for some good matchups. You can see like Porto versus Roma. That's a potential one. Fenerbahce versus Anderlecht. But I think this one will start to get real good around the round of 16 quarterfinals. And yeah, we're going to get into quickly go over all the Premier League matchups that are coming up this weekend. So on Saturday morning on USA, 7:30, early matchup, Nottingham Forest, who are coming off a pretty bad loss against Bournemouth, but still sitting third in the league. They host Brighton. I think right now Nottingham Forest are the more favored team. And then you have Liverpool, who are going into the red-hot Bournemouth side at the 10 a.m. on USA as well. Liverpool are favored, but not massively, so that should be interesting, especially as teams like Man City, Arsenal, and Nottingham Forest are going to wonder if Liverpool are going to drop any points at any time. Also at 10 a.m., Everton, who are playing better, host Leicester City. This is going to be huge for both teams. They're currently sitting 16th and 17th. Everton have a game in hand on all the teams in relegation spots. Everton are currently favored to win this matchup as they are at home. Also 10 a.m. Saturday, Ipswich Town plays Southampton. This is two teams who are sitting in the relegation zone. Southampton is having a historically bad season. Ipswich Town are back in the Premier League for the first time in forever. They are favored. Hopefully they can push through, but it's going to be a tough one. Massive to whoever can get points here. And then the last of the 10 a.m. slate, Newcastle United, who are sitting in fifth, have been on an incredible run of form in the league as of late. Host 10th place Fulham. Newcastle is favored, but I think it has potential to be a good matchup. Both teams are playing decently. Fulham can be tricky, but I think Newcastle probably will have the edge due to being at home. The 12:30 NBC game on Saturday is Wolves, who have been struggling, sitting in 18th, hosting Aston Villa. Wolves just recently lost to Arsenal last weekend. Aston Villa. It's going to be interesting to see what lineup they will have after the transfer window is over. And then on Sunday at 9 a.m., we got two matches. Brentford host Tottenham. Brentford are sitting 11th. Tottenham are sitting 15th. Brentford are actually favored, not by much. They still have plus 110 odds, but they're expected to win at 9 a.m. as well. 12th place Manchester United plays 13th place Crystal Palace. Manchester United at home, but not overwhelming favorites. If Manchester United lose again, it's going to be tough for Amorim, but I think Manchester United will be A-OK. And then 11:30, Arsenal host Manchester City. This was a really, really good game that finished, I think, 2-2 at the beginning of the season. Arsenal were playing one man down for the entire second half. With Liverpool playing a tough Bournemouth squad, this is a potential to be an incredible game for Arsenal to try to catch up to Liverpool on the table. Manchester City, you really don't know where they're going right now, so this is going to be a good litmus test. Because they beat Chelsea, but they struggled at times during Bruges against Bruges in the Champions League this week. On Monday, there's one Premier League game. Chelsea hosts West Ham United. Chelsea sitting 6th, West Ham sitting 14th. Chelsea's pretty overwhelmingly favored to go through. And then on the Monday show in England, I don't really know. I don't think there's anything going on really in England next week, but we'll go over that on the Monday show. Other kind of games in Europe that are of significance. In Spain, Atletico Madrid hosts Mallorca as they fight for the title. Real Madrid go to Espanyol. That's on Saturday. The other games across Europe on Saturday, Bayern Munich host Holstein Kiel. They're overwhelming favorites. RB Leipzig have to go to Union Berlin. And on Sunday, Barcelona hosts Alaves in La Liga. Bayer Leverkusen hosts Hoffenheim as they try to keep pressure going on Bayern Munich. A lot of really good games out of Italy on Sunday. Juventus hosts Empoli. Fiorentina hosts Genoa. The Milan Derby. AC Milan hosts Internazionale Milan at noon. Milan's going to be the home team in quotes, but Inter's still favored. And then at 2:45, Roma hosts Napoli. So that should make for interesting watching. And I don't think anything too significant on Monday. So yeah, if we've gotten to the point, very excited. Champions League draw does come out tomorrow, Friday. So by the time you're listening to this, it'll probably be announced already. If you've made it this far into the podcast, just want to say thank you. This is Talk Soccer to Me, an American podcast for the American soccer fan. This is yours truly, Jack Alt. Should be about Friday, January 31st. Good week in the Champions League, an exciting weekend of Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A coming up. Hoping to have another episode out Tuesday morning. Highlight everything going over the weekend. Go preview everything coming up on the week. But again, if you made it this far, thank you. Follow us on social media. Like, comment, subscribe. Do whatever you got to do. If you're still here, I appreciate you. Thank you and good night.